We were to secure the perimeter of a ravine known for its natural dangers. The Barranco de las Almas Perdidas, as the locals called it, a name I had always dismissed as mere superstition. They warned us about the mysterious falls that had claimed the lives of several soldiers in the past, but those warnings did not deter us. "This is just another mission, right, Captain?" said Sanchez, one of my youngest men, trying to hide his nervousness. "Exactly, Sanchez. Just another mission," I replied, concealing my own doubts. The first day passed without incident. We set up our camp and began our patrols. It was during the first night that something strange happened. I was on guard with Lopez, a veteran who had seen more than any man should in a lifetime. "Did you hear that?" Lopez asked, peering into the darkness. "No, what was it?" "It sounded like a voice." I stayed silent, trying to catch any sound. Then I heard it, a faint murmur, as if someone were whispering our names. "It must be the wind," I said, though I was not so sure. However, the voices persisted, and soon we were not the only ones hearing them. The next day, several men reported hearing the same thing. The second night was even more unsettling. This time, while patrolling, I saw something that made me stop in my tracks. A few meters ahead of us, a dark figure briefly appeared among the trees. It looked like a soldier, but not one of ours. "Did you see that?" asked Ramirez, my second in command, his eyes wide open. "Yes," I replied, unsure of what else to say. We approached cautiously, but the figure had disappeared. On inspecting the area, we found nothing. However, the feeling of being watched did not leave us. On the third day, we decided to advance into the heart of the ravine, hoping to find a rational explanation for the strange occurrences. As we descended, the voices grew louder and clearer. We could hear screams of pain and whispers calling our names. "Captain, something is very wrong here," exclaimed Hernandez, one of the bravest soldiers in the unit. "Stay calm, Hernandez. We'll get out of this together," I assured him, though I wasn't sure how. Suddenly, Sanchez, who was ahead, screamed and fell to the ground, writhing as if something invisible were attacking him. "Help! They're grabbing me!" he shouted, his eyes wide with terror. We rushed to him trying to free him, but there was nothing to see, nothing to touch. We could only feel a cold presence, a force we could not fight. We managed to drag Sanchez out of the ravine, but he was in shock. As we tried to stabilize him, we heard a sound that chilled our blood, the echo of our own voices screaming for help from the bottom of the ravine. "This can't be happening," murmured Ramirez, his face pale. It was then I understood. The souls of the soldiers who had fallen in the ravine were trapped there, reliving their final moments of agony. And now they were calling us, wanting us to share their fate. "We need to get out of here right now," I ordered, trying to keep my composure. We started to retreat, but the terrain seemed to become more treacherous with every step. The voices became deafening, and spectral figures appeared everywhere, trying to stop us. "Don't stop!" I shouted, seeing Lopez lagging behind. "I can't! They're dragging me!" he responded, struggling against something invisible. I ran towards him, but before I could reach him, I saw him disappear into the darkness, his screams fading into a deadly silence. With the first light of dawn, the voices and apparitions began to fade. We found ourselves safe, though severely affected by what had happened. We lost Lopez and 2 other men that night. Their bodies never recovered. We returned to base with more questions than answers. No one believed us when we told our story, attributing it to some kind of collective psychosis. But we knew the truth. The ravine remains there, a reminder that there are things in this world that cannot be explained. Some of my men never fully recovered from that experience, and I still dream of the voices and figures that haunted us that night. Every time I pass near a ravine, I can't help but remember what happened. Sometimes I think I hear whispers calling me, as if those lost souls still haven't finished with me. But no matter what happens, I know I will never return to that cursed place. Because there are fates worse than death, and the Barranco de las Almas Perdidas is a witness to that. The cold mountain wind cut our faces as we advanced through the narrow pass called El Paso del Terror by the locals. I remember that mission clearly. It was the year 1998, and our unit had been sent to patrol that remote region due to reports of insurgent activity. However, what we found there was much worse than any human enemy. "Keep formation and move carefully," ordered Captain Morales, his firm voice trying to conceal the nervousness we all felt. The Pass of Terra was infamous for the ambushes that had occurred there during the Civil War. Soldiers and guerrillas alike had met their end on those cliffs and treacherous paths. The tales spoke of shadows and whispers at night, but we were men of science and training, not superstition. The first night in the pass was strangely quiet. We set up our camp in a small clearing protected by tall rocks. As darkness settled, we gathered around an improvised bonfire. The crackling fire and the warmth were comforting in the midst of the night's cold. "Has anyone heard the stories of this place?" asked Sergeant Ramirez, breaking the silence. Some men nodded, others remained silent, but we all listened as Ramirez continued. "They say the souls of the fallen soldiers still roam here, seeking revenge. They found no peace in death, so now they wander these paths." The stories were not new to me. I had heard them many times, but that night I felt something different in the air, a feeling of being watched, that we were not alone. I let my thoughts wander, attributing it to fatigue and the long hours of marching. Later that night, while on guard, I heard the first whispers. At first, I thought it was the wind playing tricks on my mind, but the whispers became clearer, almost like voices trying to communicate. I turned my flashlight towards the edge of the camp, searching for anything that could be causing those sounds. I saw nothing, but the feeling of being watched intensified. "Everything okay, Lieutenant?" asked Private Gomez, who had come to relieve me. "Yes, just the wind," I lied, not wanting to worry the men. The next morning, we advanced deeper into the pass. The terrain became more difficult, the rocks sharper, and the paths narrower. As the day went on, we began to find strange things: old bayonets, rusted helmets, and torn uniforms. They were the remains of those who had fallen here decades ago. "I don't like this," murmured Private Perez, looking at a helmet with a bullet hole in the center. "Focus," said Captain Morales. "Our mission is to secure this pass and prevent any insurgent activity." The second night was worse than the first. The whispers returned, louder and more insistent. I woke up in the middle of the night with the feeling that something was moving near my tent. I went out with my weapon ready but saw nothing. However, the whispers continued, now clearly forming words I couldn't understand. "Lieutenant, did you hear that?" asked Private Torres, approaching with a terrified expression on his face. "Yes, but there's nothing here. We need to stay calm," I replied, though I was terrified myself. That night, several of us saw the shadows. At first, they were barely perceptible, but then they became clearer, human figures moving among the trees and rocks, always out of reach of our flashlights. "Damn it, there's something out there," shouted Sergeant Ramirez, firing his weapon at one of the shadows. The sound of the shots echoed in the pass, but when the light from our flashlights reached the spot, there was nothing there. Only the echo of our shots and the whispers that now seemed to mock us. By the third day, morale was at rock bottom. The men spoke in whispers, afraid of attracting the attention of whatever was stalking us. We decided it was best to retreat and leave that damned pass. The last night, the whispers turned into screams. We woke up in the midst of a storm of voices, each telling a story of betrayal, fear, and death. It was as if the ghosts of those fallen soldiers were reliving their final moments. I saw shadows fighting each other, falling to the ground in agony, and others just watching with empty eyes. "They're attacking us!" shouted Private Gomez, firing his weapon aimlessly. "Stay calm!" ordered Captain Morales, though his own voice trembled. We tried to defend ourselves, but how do you fight against shadows and whispers? It was a losing battle from the start. Finally, we managed to leave the pass at dawn. Exhausted and terrified, we looked back only to see the shadows fade with the light of the sun. The official mission report mentioned nothing of what really happened. We said we had found signs of insurgent activity and decided to withdraw to avoid unnecessary casualties. But the men who were there know the truth. The Pass of Terra is not just a legend. Something dark and vengeful resides in those cliffs, something that still feels the pain and anger of the men who died there. I never return to that place, and every time the wind blows strong at night, I can hear the whispers reminding me of that mission and the horrors we faced. We had received orders to explore an old military prison located in a remote and mountainous area. Our mission was simple: document and secure the site before its scheduled demolition. No one expected to find anything out of the ordinary. However, as night fell, we discovered that the prison's history was more sinister than we had imagined. The prison stood imposing, a gray stone colossus in the middle of nowhere. The structure, though weathered by time, retained a menacing air. Upon entering, the creaking of the rusty doors echoed like a lament. We set up in what appeared to be the guard room and began our inspection. While exploring the cells, I found a diary buried under a pile of rubble. The leather was worn and the pages yellowed. Diary of Prisoner Hash 101, read the first page. What followed was a disturbing account of torture and suffering. March 23rd, 1942. Today, I heard whispers again. No one believes me. They say I'm crazy. But I know there is something else here. I read the words with a chill running down my spine. As I continued through the pages, the prisoner's despair became more palpable. April 15th, 1942. I can't take it anymore. They wake me every night. The knocks, the screams, but no one is here. They are invisible. They are demons. That night, I shared my findings with the team. It's just another lunatic, said Jim, our leader, trying to downplay it. We can't ignore this. There's something strange in this place, replied Tom, the most superstitious of us. We decided to stay alert and continue with the mission. As night fell, the atmosphere in the prison changed. The air became dense and heavy. We gathered in the guard room where we had placed our sleeping bags. At midnight, the noises began. Thumping sounds and unintelligible whispers. We all woke up at the same time. Did you hear that? I asked, trying to stay calm. Yes, it's coming from the hallway, replied Tom, his face pale. We got up, flashlights in hand, and followed the sound. We reached a cell where the diary indicated prisoner 101 had been. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream broke the silence. We looked at each other terrified. This can't be real, muttered Jim, visibly scared. As the days passed, the phenomena worsened. Objects moved on their own, doors slammed shut, and the whispers turned into screams that chilled us to the bone. One of the most terrifying encounters was Tom's. I was in the kitchen looking for some food. I felt an intense cold behind me, and when I turned, I saw a blurry figure. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. Then the figure disappeared. The diary seemed to come to life. Every event narrated by the prisoner was repeating itself with us. We gathered to discuss our next move. This is affecting our mental health, said Jim. We need to get out of here. But we have to complete the mission, I insisted, though I was scared myself. I'd rather face a court-martial than these things, Tom replied. We finally decided to retreat at dawn. That last night was the worst. We struggled to sleep, but exhaustion eventually overcame us. Around 3 a.m, a loud noise woke us. The guard room was shrouded in darkness, and only our flashlights provided some security. Jim was the first to speak. Is everyone okay? Yes, but something is wrong here, replied Tom, visibly trembling. The diary lay open on the floor. The pages moved on their own, as if an invisible hand were flipping through them. We cautiously approached. A phrase written in fresh blood made us step back. You will not escape. Suddenly, we felt a presence behind us. A cold breath brushed our necks, and the whispers turned into deafening screams. Running and stumbling, we tried to get out of the prison. The doors slammed shut and opened violently, blocking our way. Finally, we managed to escape just as the sun began to rise on the horizon. Upon reaching the base camp, we reported our experience. No one believed us at first, but the marks on our skin and the pallor of our faces told a different story. The mission was officially aborted, and the prison was sealed forever. I never saw my comrades again. Each one went their separate ways, trying to forget what had happened. But I can't. Every night the whispers return. I know they're there, waiting. The story I'm about to share happened at a temporary military camp in a remote and forgotten region. Though it's difficult to talk about, I feel compelled to recount what we lived through, for it might serve as a warning to others. It was a night like any other when it all began. We had set up camp in a forest clearing, far from any civilization. The mission was simple: secure the area and prepare the ground for future operations. But the simplicity of our task quickly dissolved into indescribable dread. It all started with Corporal Martinez, a robust and always jovial guy I had known for years. One morning, he woke up pale with deep circles under his eyes. It seemed like he hadn't slept in days. "What's wrong, Martinez?" I asked as we prepared for the daily routine. "Last night," he said in a whisper, as if afraid someone else might hear us. "Last night I saw something." "Something?" I replied, trying to sound nonchalant. "A nightmare?" "No, it was real. I saw a figure in my tent. It was tall, thin, and covered in shadows. It whispered things to me in a language I didn't understand. Then I felt a sharp pain in my chest, and everything went black." I didn't give it much importance at that moment, thinking he had just had a bad dream. But that same night, another soldier, Sergeant Ramirez, reported seeing the same thing, a dark figure whispering before disappearing. By then, I started to feel an increasing unease. Something was not right. By the third day, the entire camp was on high alert. Soldiers began falling ill one after another. The symptoms were always the same: high fever, extreme weakness, and delirium. And always, they mentioned the dark figures whispering in their ears before falling ill. Lieutenant Suarez, our commanding officer, tried to maintain calm and discipline, but even he could not hide his concern. One night, as we discussed the situation in his tent, I noticed his hand trembling slightly. "This can't be a coincidence," he said, running a hand through his gray hair. "There's something in this place, something affecting the men." "We need to evacuate, Lieutenant," I suggested. "This is out of our control." But evacuation was not an easy option. We were on a crucial mission, and the High Command would not understand a retreat without a concrete reason. A week later, the situation had become untenable. Most of the men were incapacitated, and those who remained standing were on the verge of collapse from exhaustion and fear. I myself began to feel the first signs of the illness: fever, chills, and worst of all, those whispers in the night. One night, as I tried to sleep, I felt a presence in my tent. I opened my eyes, and there it was, a dark, blurry figure. Its words were unintelligible but filled with malice. I tried to move, but my body was paralyzed. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, as if something was trying to tear out my soul. Then everything went black. I woke up at dawn, drenched in sweat, and with a sense of terror I had never experienced before. I knew we didn't have much time. If we didn't do something soon, we would all die. Finally, Lieutenant Suarez made a drastic decision. He contacted the High Command and explained the situation. I don't know what he told them exactly, but the next morning we received the order to evacuate the camp. As we retreated, the whispers intensified. I could feel the dark figures following us, stalking us. It was a chaotic withdrawal, with the sick men being carried on improvised stretchers and the others covering our advance, fearful of what might come from the darkness of the forest. Upon reaching the extraction point, the tension eased a bit, but the fear did not disappear. The helicopters took us to a safer base, where we finally received proper medical treatment. The illness began to subside, but the psychological scars remained. Today, years later, I still have nightmares about those whispers and the dark figures. Some of my comrades never fully recovered, and others simply couldn't overcome the experience. The official reports never mentioned anything about the dark figures. They only referred to an unknown illness that affected the unit. But those of us who were there know the truth. Something ancient and evil inhabited that forest and toyed with our minds and bodies as if we were mere puppets. The experience left me with a clear lesson. There are things in this world that we cannot understand or fight with our weapons and training. And sometimes all we can do is survive and live to tell the tale, hoping that others do not suffer the same fate.